Give me a second. I will share my, I think I will share my desktop. Yeah, I think you're able to see. So just give me an indication that you're able to see my desktop. So you can see, right? Okay, great. Okay, so let us continue. I will just share my screen. Done. Okay, fine. Yeah. So today we'll be starting from today onwards, we'll be starting on the jTag debugging sessions. Okay. The flow will be first we'll try to understand what is jTag. I think some of you people would have already gone through what is jTag. I think some people would have missed, so that I will just scan through what is jTag and other things. Okay. Then we will look at currently we are debugging Raspberry Pi with one of our debugger. So I will share detail with that. If you want, you can also do the same thing at your end. Okay. So then after that, we look into the configuration files and we will try to understand how the configuration file looks like. What are the parameters they're setting inside the configuration file? Okay. And then we'll be doing a debugging sessions with respect to this board, whatever we have set up. Okay. So with that, so we will start now. Okay. So first we'll try to understand what is jTag debugging. Okay. So as was already mentioned, okay. So JTAG is a very important part of our debugging in any, if you take any hardware, right? JTAG is also one of the important critical hardware, which helps us to take the control over the board. Okay. So JTAG is basically JTAG is one of the entity, and it came up when the initially, if you look at the evolution of VLSI chip, right? So in the olden days, they used to develop a lot of VLSI chips, and the VLSI chip had a lot of semiconductor components on it, and the connection between them was done using a minute wires, basically which was in a millimeter or micrometer in length. Okay. So and if there is any disconnection in one of the wire, the basically the whole chip used to fail. And finding out where the failure is and how to fix them and to evaluate and see if each and every parts are working fine was a question at that point of a time. Okay. So that is when the joint JTAG stands for Joint Test Group, basically. So they came up with a mechanism which made debugging of the VLSI chips possible. Okay. So this JTAG later they found that using this we can also do a board bring up and other activity which was not possible, which was impossible without this. Without this, okay. For this reason, the JTAG is also very critical. Yeah. So JTAG comes in many. Whenever you see the board, right, the any processor will provide a JTAG pin out. Okay. And ARM, whenever since we are debugging ARM, I'll talk mostly with respect to the ARM, but then the same thing applies to the other processor also. Yeah. So in case of ARM, so ARM comes with 20 pin JTAG pin out or a 10 pin JTAG pin out. So there are some critical pins which are required for a JTAG communication to occur. So initially before JTAG evolution, there was something called in-circuit emulators, which was used, which means that the instead of JTAG will control the current processor, but ICE will simulate the processor and it will remove the processor out of the picture. So moment you connect an ICE, when you try to emulate your board, a processor CPU, so at that time, what happens is it will discard your CPU and this IC will take control over the board and it will start working. But this needs a lot of pinout and this was not feasible for much of hardware debugging. That is when the JTAG came into the picture. Okay. So main problem with ICE was the pinout. For example, if you see the latest processors, they come with almost a 400, 500 pinout and having so much pinout for IC, and moreover, all of them are BGA and they're so tightly packed. So taking the control of each and every pin is almost impossible. So to solve this problem, the JTAG came into the picture, which was introduced as a part of a joint test action group. Okay. So which was meant initially for only testing the VLSI chip. Okay. So using this, there are few pins. Using those few signals and inputs, it can take a control of the entire bus, address bus, data bus, and all the necessary control signals, and it can control the entire board, and it can test also, and it can also control the entire chipset, basically. Okay. So this is how it will work. So if you look at the signals, JTAG has normally this signals. It will have TDI. This is where the data will enter into your device. Okay. And it will have a TMS. So this is your test mode select where you will tell what kind of mode you are putting your processor or a chipset into. And clock is the clock signal what you are providing to your chip. Okay. And then after that, so you have one line for putting the data in, and you have another line where you get the data out. So using the state machine, you can put any signal to any chipset, and you can propagate the signal to the next entity also, and you can control each and every part of it. And JTAG basically works on serial protocol. Okay. And there are a lot of processors which are JTAG aware. Normally, if you take many processor, right, nowadays all the processor by default they come with JTAG pinout. Normally, a lot of ARM will come with the JTAG pins, and some boards, evaluation board, whatever you purchase in the market, they normally come with a JTAG pin itself, so that you can also evaluate the system, and you can also debug, and you can also do a lot of activity with respect to that evaluation board also. In case you are building your custom board, you have to get that pin out for your further debugging and enhancement. Normally for the release boards, you don't have a JTAG connection on them. The reason being that if you have a JTAG connection on the released productions hardwares, there's a possibility that the end users will modify a lot of things, or they corrupt the hardware, or they can get the hardware into the inconsistent state. So they don't do it. They don't release a JTAG pinout in the released hardware. But normally for the development hardware, you'll have a JTAG pinout, which helps the development process to go in a smoother and faster way. So that is how you will have it. And normally a lot of the processor will have a JTAG pinout. ARM by default has it, MIPS has it, and even x86 also has a JTAG pinout. Okay, so JTAG is also referred to as on-chip debugging, because JTAG module resides on the chip, and using which we perform the debugging. Okay, so as I mentioned previously, also there are a lot of vendors who provide the JTAG hardwares, debuggers, to connect to the JTAG interface that is available on the board and to debug. Okay, so one such popular vendors are Lauterbach, Wind River, Amtron, Mentor Graphics. These are all the popular vendors who provide the JTAG debuggers, and these JTAG debuggers are very costly. Okay, so but the debugger what we are using for our debugging is nothing but an open OCD based debugger. So we are using an open source hardware and an open source debugger for debugging our Raspberry Pi board. So the board what we will be debugging is a Raspberry Pi board, but as basically a Raspberry Pi 3, and I will provide you the detail. But the software what we use for debugging is nothing but an open source OCD debugger. Okay, it's an open source debugger which was developed as a part of the college project, which evolved over the time, which can handle the complex debugging also. So this is a very popular open source debugging software that is available. Yeah, so which I will discuss over the time. And so we will be doing most of our debugging with OpenOCD debugging. Okay, so which take control over JTAG and can debug our board. So normally the JTAG connection to our board, sorry, somebody wants to ask something.
Yes, actually,
Yeah.
I want to ask, like, if
Yeah.
the device does not support the interface for the JTAG, then
Your
how
voice is
can we?
breaking. Sorry, can you just try again if you don't mind? I missed the initial part.
Yeah, actually, want to ask, like, if the device does not support the interface for the JTAG, then how
Uh-huh.
we can debug anything from the device through the JTAG.
Okay, you meant the device doesn't support JTAG only?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
See, if device doesn't support JTAG, normally what happens is that particular processor, right? They'll have a kind of debug interface for debugging. Okay, so in case if you take some lot of M3 processor, right? They have a debug protocol called ST-Link and other things. So using that protocols, you'll be able to debug. Okay, so that is one way of debugging. But the problem is the initial firmware should boot up. Only then you will be able to debug. So you will not be able to debug from the scratch, basically. Okay, so in case If there is no basically you need some kind of a mechanism or an interface to debug, else it's almost impossible to debug. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, but is there any board which you are referring to? If you have any board or processor in mind, can you just name it, so the other people also know which one you are referring to?
No, I don't have a name right now, but I just
Okay.
a question for to ask, like, what is
Yeah.
it?
See, normally, if you look any production hardware, right, they are developed using ARM only. Okay. By default, ARM supports JTAG, or there is another protocol called SWD, which is an reduced form of reduced form of JTAG, which comes with a lesser pin out. Okay. So if you are developing either on Cortex M series processor or Cortex A series processor, they will 99% of the time you will have a JTAG pinout. Okay, if there is no JTAG pinout, then you are limited to debug only your application software, but you can't debug your what do you tell firmwares, low level firmwares. Okay,
Okay.
yeah. Yes, sorry actually, but problem is I think there is some disturbance in your line. Okay, so I'm not able to get your questions at times. Yeah, don't. Yeah, if there is anything if you feel sometimes if I don't get your question correctly, you can put on the chat window. Okay. Yeah. So now the JTAG interface to your host computer can be via sorry. So the JTAG interface to your host computer can normally be via any of your it can be via any of our popular interfaces. Okay, most of the time it will be via USB interface. Okay, or it could also be via Ethernet interface. Okay, or else it can also be sometimes via serial interface also. Okay, so these are all the popular interfaces that is available, which can be connected to your host computers. So parallel port is become almost absolute. It's still in some cases the serial port is still available, but this will also become absolute. Okay. So now the existing interface that is used to connect your host computer is nothing but an USB, or it will be an Ethernet. Ethernet. Okay. So USB is mostly used most of the times, and Ethernet in some cases also it is used. So now, and you will have a kind of you will have a user interface. It could be a vendor defined user interface, or else you can also use an Eclipse plugin to connect your board and get all the details. Yeah, so in our case we will be using a GDB for debugging via OpenOCD, which you will see over the time. Okay, so this is one way where you use so this is the meet jet to connect over JTAG debuggers. We need a front end. Okay, so the front end sometimes can be an Eclipse, and the back end will be a GDB, and the GDB in turns will make a connection. Yeah, so GDB in turn will be connecting to the JTAG debugger. So the JTAG debugger will normally run in the GDB interfaces, so using which we'll collect the data, and we will use using the JTAG GDB client. We will fetch all the data and will showcase onto the corresponding users. Okay, so we will see with an example how we will be doing with respect to that. Okay, so next question is, what all things we can do using the JTAG? Since I already stressed and told you that JTAG can take the complete control of the board, so whatever board can do at any processor can do at any point of time, your JTAG also can do. Okay, so normally what can your processor do? It will be able to flash your basically it can flash your NAND flash. If you have a secondary storage, it will be able to communicate, and it can read the data from that, or else it can also flash the data into that. Okay, so even the JTAG can do that. Yeah, and next thing is in your whenever you're debugging, right, you may have to set a breakpoint for a specific instructions. Okay, so that also JTag also can do that. It can set a breakpoint. It can assist in providing a debug breakpoints. Okay, so normally the debug breakpoints are two categories. One is called as an hardware breakpoint. Other one is called as a software breakpoint. So hardware breakpoint is something where your JTag will have a breakpoint, and it will compare whenever the PC is whenever it will be tracking the PC. Whenever the PC exactly matches to the PC point where the breakpoint has been set, it will alt the CPU and give the control back to the backend GDB to start debugging. So that kind of a breakpoint is called as a software breakpoint. Yeah. So there is also one more breakpoint called as an hardware breakpoint, but those are limited. In which case the breakpoint is directly set on the CPU, a CPU as a debugging unit. So what will happen is the CPU in this case, rather than the JTAG debugger tracking for the PC value, the CPU internally will track for the PC value. So the moment it matches the point what has been set by the corresponding user, that is nothing but the breakpoint program counter. So it immediately alts and gives the control to the JTAG debugger, telling that so the breakpoint has been hit and it can take the control. Okay, so these are the different category of breakpoint that can exist in any CPU. So normally you would have seen the hardware breakpoint. You can also configure and you can tell what is the breakpoint you want to set, whether you want to set as an hardware breakpoint or a software breakpoint. Normally an hardware breakpoint will be limited to one or two, but you can set unlimited software breakpoint. There is no limit for the software breakpoint. Yeah. Okay. So next thing is JTAG unit will take a complete control of your address bus, and it can be used since it takes the complete control of your address bus and data bus. It can also write the data to your RAM, and it can also read the data from the RAM, and it can also access all the memory map devices and basically read all the values of the registers, basically the value of your peripherals, and also it can put a new value into the peripherals. So all these things are possible from the JTAG. Okay, and you take any JTAG hardware, there'll be a configuration file, because reason is since JTAG is a common hardware or a common unit, so you have to configure it to tell what kind of hardware you're debugging currently and how to access that particular hardware and what are the things you have to do. So for this, there is something called as a configuration file. So using this configuration file, you'll be guiding the JTAG debugger how to take the control of that particular hardware. So if there is no proper configuration file, your JTAG will never know what kind of hardware it is trying to access and how to access that particular hardware. Yeah. So that is the reason whenever you debug any JTAG, when you do any JTAG debugging, one of the main part you will come across is nothing but a configuration file. So without configuration file, you'll never be able to run your JTAG effectively. Yeah. So, so you need sometimes you can use sometimes the JTAG vendor itself gives some a set of configuration file for the well-known evaluation boards. Okay, so for example, let us assume BeagleBone is a popular evaluation board, and normally most of the vendors will give a configuration file for BeagleBone, telling that use this XYZ configuration file, which is meant for BeagleBone. Then you can take you can use this hardware, JTAG hardware, take the complete control of the board, which is based on so and so processors. Yeah. So similarly, let us take in case of Raspberry Pi. Even for Raspberry Pi, there will be a default configuration which most of the JTAG vendor provides, which can be used to take the control of that board and perform all the actions. Yeah. So like this, and sometimes, most of the times, what really happens is your production hardware will be designed out of the evaluation hardware. Okay. So what normally people do is they take this configuration, release configuration file from the vendor, and over that they modify based on their corresponding hardware design and set up an JTAG debugger to work even with the production hardware also. Okay, so we will look at it. What are the basic configuration we have to set, and how does it take the control of your board? So we will have a look at that. Okay, and if you look at this, so one configuration files here, you're seeing that we are providing a necessary parameters telling that how to access the SD RAM, because see, whenever you're telling that you are taking control of the board, right? for the board to work effectively, right? You have to set a necessary configuration parameters to few peripherals. Like RAM is one of the critical hardware. So without configuring the RAM properly, you can't access the RAM. And if you see, right, normally a lot of the in most of the cases, the RAM what you see is based on SD RAM. Okay, so SD RAM reads a lot of configuration where you have to set up a refresh rate and you have to set which mode you're accessing, and you need to set all the parameters. If you don't set all these parameters, your RAM will not work in the right order. That means you can't put a code into the RAM to work, and which means that you will not be able to run any part of the code. Okay, so RAM configuration is one of the thing, and after that you may have to configure the few important parts in a CPU also. So to set it to the right mode and see that the coprocessor are initialized to the right value. Yeah. So all this initialization also we have to take care. So that also will be part of the configuration files. Okay, and after once we have the right configuration files, we can use this configuration file to take the control of the board, which in turn means that you would have initialized all the basic needed peripheral for the board to run. And from there on, we can run our program and take the control of the other secondary peripherals, and see that you can see and verify and check out if all the hardwares are functioning correctly. And once the particular hardware functions correctly, so normally what happens is when you're doing a board bring up, you'll check out all the board parts of the boards are working fine by writing a small configuration script. Okay, so once it is working fine, then you'll propagate all of this configuration parameters to your bootloader, and you will compile the bootloader and load it to the RAM with the help of the this jTag debugger, and you verify that the board is working fine. And the moment the board is working fine, and if you have configured your board to boot and you have a right boot medium in place, you will flash this bootloader into the boot medium so that the bootloader will be pulled up by the processor initially when it boots up, and that means that your bootloader is up and running. Okay, so you can verify once if the bootloader is working fine, and once you give a control to the bootloader, then bootloader will take the control of each and every part of the system later point of time. So bootloader is the first initial piece of an hardware which you have to set up, which you have to debug, and which you have to see that it takes the control of your board. And once you see that the bootloader is taking the control of your board, then bootloader will take control of your board, and it can fetch an kernel from the right point of a time, and take the rootfs from the corresponding point, and it can boot a kernel, and then it passes the control to your operating system. Okay, so till the bootloader, the jTag is very useful, but after once the bootloader comes into the place, then kernel will take control of your board, and you can use all the software tools which is available in the world to debug. Okay, so jTag is needed just before the bootloader and all the board bring up and other part of the time. Yeah, and even for debugging your operating system also. Okay, so then after that, once you do using a jTag, so some of the jTag should be aware of your even your Linux kernel also. The reason being that Linux is such a complex operating system. Let us assume that I want to get a lot of information about how many tasks are running, how many processes are running. If I want to debug a specific processor, how to do it. Okay, so this is something which is more internal and more relevant to the Linux hardware, what we are running on. Okay, Linux operating system and its mechanism, because it depends from time to time and it varies from time to time, and moreover this has a very complex structures. So if your jtag is aware of this, how to debug the Linux, right, with the help of a necessary configuration, it makes our task much easier. Then we need not do all those things manually, else we have to check out what is the mmu address, go to that mmu address and figure out where is the proper kernel. Then after that you need to go back to that address, and so we need to do a lot of we need to go through a lot of complexity. Okay, so if your JTAG hardware debugger is aware of your Linux kernel, and it tracks all the virtual to physical to virtual address translation and virtual to physical address translation. Okay, and it is capable of setting an hardware breakpoints, and you can debug the Linux kernel at any point of time, and also fetch all the process information and all the other parameters, right? This is more than sufficient for us to do all our necessary activity. Okay, so for this reason, we should always, whenever we select the JTAG debugger, we should see that it's Linux aware. But whatever debugger we are using is not so much Linux aware, but that is fine for our purposes. But for the real production hardware, we have to select an JTag debugger, which is more Linux aware. Okay, so for example, the most popular one which is available is Lauterbach is also one popular one. So that is also Linux aware, and you can check out BDI also, that is also Linux aware. So like this, there are a lot of operating systems which are Linux aware. So because of which we need not worry about other parts of it. Okay. So now, so we will look at the OpenOCD debugger. So what we will be using for our debugging is nothing but an debugger called OpenOCD debugger. And our hardware, so software, what we use an OpenOCD software, and the debugger is based on this OpenOCD mechanism. Okay. So this is nothing but, as I already mentioned, this software came as a part of a college project initially, and which was open sourced at later point of time, which a lot of people saw that a benefit of it, because before this, people have to spend an FT amount to buy an JTAG hardware to debug their particular subsystem. So because due to this, this project came into the place as a college project, and it was successful also. And after this, it was released to the community, and a lot of people started contributing, and they found that this is very useful. And after that, a lot of hardware ecosystem also came into the picture, where a lot of hardware came into the picture, and they started seeing and exploring, and it started enhanced, okay, over the time. So even, and this is not costly also, since it's an open source software. It's based on open source community, right? So you can get a good JTAG debuggers for around it's I would good doesn't mean that it's very good, but the decent JTAG debugger which is sufficient to do your basic debugging at home for around 5 to 10K basically. So with that cost, you can buy an hardware, and you can use it for debugging. So that is one such hardware what we are using for our debugging. So, and which we'll be showcasing in our coming sessions also. Okay. So I think there is a message. Give me a second. No. It's 5 to 10K. It's rupees actually. Okay, 5,000 to 10,000 rupees. Okay. So to showcase that, I will just show you some of the hardwares that is available. Just give me a second. Yeah. So there are a lot of popular OpenOCD debuggers. One such is something like this. This is also one of the OpenOCD debugger, which is used to debug STM32. Okay, and what we are using is this one Olimex. Okay, so but this is a low end one. What we are using is a bit high end one. Okay, so I will just show you that. Yeah. So what we are using is this one. It's called ARM USB OCDH. This supports the JTAG debugging. So this is the one what we are using. So this will actually from here it is costing around 6 to 7K, 7,000 rupees. Okay, but problem is this need to be shipped all the way from US, and sometimes so they, at least for us, they added some custom charges. So if you find a right vendor in Bangalore, you can just purchase them. I think it will also cost, including all the in India, I think it will come around 10K, which is almost equivalent to adding the custom duty and other things. So it's better to buy in India only. So this is what it is. Okay. So internally, this debugger is based will support OpenOCD. Yeah. And this internally, ultimately, all of this debuggers, right, uses FTH 232 USB based chipset for getting accessing the JTAG line and performing the debugging. Okay, and this supports USB debugging. If you see this line, right, this particular line, this is where an USB interface that will connect to our host. You can also connect via serial, but we don't use serial. Normally, we use an USB and connect to our host. Okay, and at the other end, it's nothing but your JTAG cable, which will go to your JTAG chip. Okay, so we will see that, and this supports, and this directly interface to our ARM boards, and you can debug your ARM chip at any point of time. Yeah. So this is the main part about it. So what we will be using in our sessions for our debugging. Okay. So in case if you also want, you can buy this. It's a very not costly one. It would cost around 10K, and this is sufficient for our debugging. Okay. So this is how it will be put up. Yeah. And if you look at the JTAG end, that is nothing but this end. The pinout will be something like this. So if you want to connect to your board, you need to connect all these lines to your Raspberry Pi. So I will tell you how to connect it. This is the way we have to make a connections, and we have to connect to our board, which we'll be discussing now. Yeah. Okay. So as I told you, this is the debugger what we'll be using for our debugging. This is called as an OpenOCD debugger, and the source code for this is available in the GitHub link. You can download it, build it, and install it. Okay. So the steps is very simple. So moment you install and if you debug, if you run after you compile and install, so you will have an OpenOCD which is capable of taking the control of the device via USB and working on it. Yeah. So now what happens is after this OpenOCD, it provides, and the moment you run this, it will take the control of your hardware, and it will fetch all the details from your hardware via the JTAG, and it will expose the data at the other end either using Telnet or via GDB. Okay. So using GDB stubs, you can connect to this JTAG debugger, and you can debug your board. So that's possible. Or else you can connect via Telnet and get more details about your board. So any of the things are possible. Okay. And for this, there are some set of configuration files which we have to use to configure our particular board, which I will show you. Okay. And this is a very popular project. So currently they are so there is a lot of people who are contributing to this. So because of which it supports all the latest ARM cores. So nothing to worry about that. So it supports all the Cortex cores and Cortex A9 cores and all the latest Cortex cores, 64-bit ARM cores. So everything it supports. Okay. So it's regularly updated and regularly enhanced. So nothing to worry about that. Okay. So there is no problem. And if you have any problem, there is a community where you can access, where you can post your questions and you'll get a response for all the parts. Okay. So this is one thing which you can do. Yeah. Now, as a part of the configuration files, so there are a lot of configuration files for OpenOCD, which we will discuss. Okay. So OpenOCD, there are few things basically which you need to be aware of. So when you run the OpenOCD, so normally what happens is, I will just show it to you. So you can run OpenOCD just after so in my case, I've downloaded the OpenOCD from the GitHub link. Okay, so there is a lot of GitHub link. You can just refer to that. So you have to download it from this link. Okay, so they're given us steps how to build down the line here. So you have to just follow this steps and you have to build your package. So once you have built it, then your JTAG is ready. Okay. So these are all the JTAG adapters OpenOCD supports currently. Okay. So if you see here, there's a list of almost 30 to 40. I think it's more than 50 plus you see. So all these hardwares it supports. Okay. So all the way from the proprietary hardwares to the open source hardware, everything it supports. Ulink is an open source one. Okay. So ST-Link, you'll see J-Link. J-Link is a proprietary one. Okay. But the hardware is very cheap. It doesn't cost much. It'll cost around 15 to 20K, around that range. Okay. So that is available. Okay. Or else there is also mechanism where you can make your Raspberry Pi as your debugger. So it's even OpenOCD supports that. Okay. So what you can do is you can debug one Raspberry Pi board from another Raspberry Pi board, where you make other Raspberry Pi board as a debugger, and by running an OpenOCD on that, you can make that as the JTAG debugger. So that is also possible. So all those things it supports. Okay. So that is there is something called as Raspberry Pi bit banging. So if once you make a Raspberry Pi to work as a debugger, you can make even Raspberry Pi as a debugger, and you can debug other board. If you feel spending 7K to 8K is very costly for you people, Okay, so you can, what you can do is you can buy a Raspberry Pi, one Raspberry Pi board, and you can convert that also to the debugger. That is possible. Okay, or else you can also use this FTDI chip, which is very cheap. It is not costly. I think if you have an hardware knowledge, you can buy an FTDI chip, which will cost around 300 to 400 rupees. And after that, if you can connect, if you can make a proper soldering, you can assemble your own debugger also. Okay, or else you will also get a pre-soldered board, which will cost around 3k to 2k to 3k, for which you can use for your making your own debuggers and debug your ARM boards. So basically, the OCD supports this hardware. You can use this hardware and you can debug. So you have to see this list and check out which one it is, and you can do it. For example, they're telling BCM to 2835, it's nothing but your Raspberry Pi board. So this also supports. Okay, so all these things are possible. You can use it. Okay, so now moment you come to the debug hardware, it can debug all this variety of hardware. It supports all of this. So for example, it can does debug ARM 64-bit. Okay, it can debug ARM 11, ARM 7, ARM 9. It can debug all the Cortex A cores. Okay, it can debug even Cortex R cores. It can debug Cortex M cores. Okay, so it supports all of this. So this OpenOCD software has a capability of debugging all of this. Okay, and then after that, it's not limited only to ARM boards. It can also debug Xscale. Okay, and it can also debug your AVR. Yeah, and it can also debug your RISC-V. So all the RISC-V, Intel, Quark, all those things can be debugged using this debugger. Okay. Now the question arises is, as I told you, yeah, we know what all hardware it supports. Okay. So we know what all boards we can debug, what all processor targets you can debug. Now, one more thing is for flashing the program onto the necessary chipset, right? You need an algorithm. So OpenOCD has a variety of algorithms which makes it possible to flash even your software on their particular NAND flash, or it could be your normally for embedded system you'll see only NAND flash. Okay, so it can basically flash or your NAND flash and other NOR flash and other things. So there is an algorithm here. So you can see that there are a lot of algorithm that is available. So you can use any of this algorithm to perform the flashing also. This is also possible. Okay. So then after that, there is a steps which is mentioned how to install an OpenOCD on your system. So which I have also followed. So if you just follow this steps, so you'll be able to install the OpenOCD on your computer. So these are the steps basically. So if you follow the steps, so you'll have an OpenOCD up and running. So once it is up and running, so you can check if it is working fine by, I will just run this command. So you can check if it is working fine. Okay, so in this case, there is no configuration file and other things. So this is failing. Okay, so or else I can use -h to get me help information. Okay, so or else normally it will search for the configuration file in the default path. Okay, in case if you want to change the default configuration path, you can also do it by using a -s option. Yeah, and and if you want to run some specific commands, you can run even that also. That is also possible. So or else you can get the debug information. All of these things are possible. Yeah, so this is the way, and that is what this is talking about. So by using -h you get an help information. Using -s you can change your configuration files, and after that you can select which board you're debugging by selecting -f interface, where you tell what is your interface. Okay, if you see this GitHub link, right? So in this currently our OpenOCD supports any of this interfaces. So you have to select one of this interface from this. Okay, and then after that you have to select which target you are trying to debug. So that is also one of the important parts. Okay, so that also you need to pass as a parameter in the second option basically. So using the -f option. So that is also available in this case. So you have to select any of this target, which target you are trying to debug. Okay. So there are preset configuration which you can use to do this action, which I'll be showcasing. Okay. So then once you have done, so the configuration will look something like this, where I will use a -OpenSCD. And if you look here, I'm using a, in this particular example, they're using an ST link. Just give me a second. Yeah. So in this particular example, they're using an ST-link to debug. So the interface is ST-link. Okay, so I can just showcase to you what is ST-link. Give me a second. This is an ST-link. I think if you people are aware of your STM, right? You would have come across ST-link sometime. ST-link debugger. Yeah. So these are all the variety of ST-link debuggers. Okay, so this is one. Okay, this is version 2, or this is also a different kind of ST-link. Okay, so these are all the variety of ST-link that is available for our debugging. Okay, so but what so that is what is need to be mentioned. We need to tell which basically we are sorry, I just stop sharing. Yeah, so in this case we are just mentioning what is the interface we are trying to select. Okay, then after that we are telling which target we are trying to access. Okay, so in this case I am trying to tell that I'm accessing STM32, and this is more to do with the board. Yeah, so once you start, your OpenOCD will take a control of your board. Okay. So if it what it will do is, using the JTAG protocol, it will scan your board, then it will find out, yes, if it is trying to take the control of the right board as per the configuration file. If yes, then it will succeed. Then after that, it will open many ports, one for the telnet, so that you people can telnet to the open JTAG and take the complete control. That is also possible. Or else it will also open a GDB port, where your GDB client can connect to this port, and you can start debugging. So that is also possible. Okay, so we will see that with an example now. So this is one way of doing it. Okay, so let me go to it. Yeah, so once you have done, so we will look at the configuration files first before doing some hands-on. So all the default configuration, if you don't specify anything, it will look in this folder for the configuration files, so which is placed in user local share OpenOCD scripts. Okay, so we'll go to this folder and user. Okay, just give me a second. User local. Yeah. So your all your configuration files will be available in this folder called scripts. So in this case, all the interface files, configuration files will be, and one thing about OpenOCD is, all the configuration are written in the TCL language. Okay, so basically, so whenever you are trying to support, if you're now in this case, you'll find a lot of configuration file for the popular hardwares. So what you have to do most of the times is, you have to copy that configuration file and adapt to your particular board. In case if it is for the production hardware, for if it is for the popular development boards, then you'll find most of the configurations here only. Okay, so in this case, this folder will as a configuration file for your interfaces. So you basically, your JTAG hardware, what is your capability of JTAG hardware, how to connect, so all those detail will be available here. So this as an information about your target. If in case if you're building everything from the scratch, all the chip information will be available here. Okay, or if you know the board and if you want to debug from the board, that is also available in this particular folder. Okay, so the chip details, the CPU details, interface details, the target details, and the board details will be available in this corresponding configuration. Yeah, so we'll go to this interface folder. So currently it supports all of these interfaces. So ST-Link is one thing what I was talking about. Okay, so but there are a lot of other things also. For example, if you see here, there is something called JTag VPI, there is something called JTag at, there is a JLink. Okay, so there's a configuration file. If your interface is of type JLink, that is also available. I also mentioned that even Raspberry Pi can also be used as a debugger. So there's a configuration file even for that. Okay, so and there's a configuration file for ST-Link. Yeah, and there's a configuration file for U-Link. there's a configuration file for OpenJDK. These are all the hardware. Okay. So as I told you, if you have an FDTI chip, there's a configuration files even for that. Or if there is an FD232R chipset, even for that, the hardware based on this chipset, there is also a configuration file even for that. Okay. So let us take this example where we are configuring our Raspberry Pi, where we are using one of the Raspberry Pi as a debugger. Okay. So in this case, it tells what is my adapter. Okay, so what driver to use, what is the peripheral, where is the base address for the peripheral, and we are setting the CPU speed, basically at what speed my JTAG should run at. Okay, and what pins the JTAG, what pins I'll be using for the JTAG purposes. Yeah, and then after that, if we are doing an SWD debugging, basically, which where we are trying to debug the Cortex M series board. In that case, the GPU should be configured as what. So all those detail will be available in this. Okay, so if you see here, these are the configuration file that look like. So where I'm this in the first line, I'm defining an adapter and I'm telling for this adapter which driver should be used. So in this case, I'm configuring most of the things via GPIO. So there should we should load an BM32835 GPIO driver. And after that, we need to set a base address because all the access should happen to this address. Yeah. So we are setting a base address and we are telling how to configure that GPIO to a JTAG purposes so that that can be used for JTAG debugging. So that is also mentioned here. So once I run this, select this interface, my Raspberry Pi will act as a JTAG debugger. Okay, so this is the normal Raspberry Pi. And there is one more configuration file where I can make Raspberry Pi 2 for JTAG debugging. So this is for my Raspberry Pi 2. And if you see here, the board is different and the base address also will be different. Since the board is different, the base address will be different. The pinout also details also will change and speed will also vary. Okay. So all those details you can see here and which is available in this particular case. Okay. So this is from the debugger point of view, but what we will be using in our cases. Okay. So we will be using FDTI. Okay. So that is nothing but, as I told you, this one. And what we will be using is this basically. Okay, so we will check out how is this configured. Okay, so in this case we are telling that now because the board whatever I am telling about Olimex is using an FTTI chipset inside. Okay, so I'm telling that to take a control of this Olimex board, I need a FTTI driver. So I'm just telling it. Okay, then after that, since this FTTI works via USB, I'm telling what VID and PID it need to map to take the control of that particular board. Once it finds this VID and PID, then your FDTI will take a control of that. Okay, and then FDTI will do all the operations. So it tells to LED to glow which pin should use. If I want to reset which what action should I do? If I want to do software reset, how to do it? Okay, or if I want to initialize, what parameters should I pass? So all the things are mentioned in this particular configuration files basically. Okay, so once we use this, your Olimex board will be ready and it will be up and running. So now your debugger is up and running. Okay. So now we need to select any of the targets. So we will go to some targets and we'll check out what are the configuration file for the target looks like. Okay. So let us assume we want to debug your Raspberry Pi because Raspberry Pi will come as a board. Let us assume you want to debug your BeagleBone or something. Yeah. If I want to debug my Raspberry Pi. Okay, so Raspberry Pi it will come in 3 will come in any of the it will 2835 is the very old one. Okay, so we will be using 2836 for our debugging. Okay, so if you see this, so it gives details how to debug this target. Yeah, so in this case, so what we are doing is normally when your Raspberry Pi takes the control. Okay, so here you are telling what should be the chip name. So I'm telling the chip name should be BCM2836. Okay, so I'm telling how many cores this board really has. So this board has basically 4 cores. That detail also I'm passing to this debugger. So the debugger is aware, telling it how many core it has and what is the chipset I'm debugging on. Yeah. So then after that, we are telling if SMP is supported or not, else we don't do it. And as a part of JTAG, it has something an hardware called DAP, tap ID. So this is required to take the control and to verify and to see that whether we have an access to our JTAG lines. So this also need to be passed. Okay. So once this is passed, and we also set a speed to our adapter. Okay. Then after that, we take a control over JTag by using this dap commands. Okay. So we need to use a dap command to take a control of a board. So we're passing all the dap command, and and we need to pass this command. So after this, we'll have a control of a board, and we can do a direct memory access of a particular board, and we can start debugging. Okay. So now we just set all the parameters. So once this parameters is set, now so we'll have a control. So this all the necessary parameters what you see here. Okay. So which tells since it has multiple cores, we are also telling how to take the control of all the cores, what is the detail of each core. Okay. Then we also pass a parameter telling that how the target look like and all the things. So all these parameters we pass to this target. Okay. So this is also one thing which we have to do. Okay. So this if I want to write everything from the scratch, so yeah, so here my board is based on this chipset. Okay, but it is not based on the board. Okay, so in that case I configure it, and I can use it and write my own configuration if I want. Yeah. So in case if I have a board and I know which board I'm debugging, so there is a configuration file even for the board also. So if I go to this board, and you will find Raspberry Pi 3.config. Okay, so this is the configuration file for debugging my Raspberry Pi. Okay, so if you see here, what it does is it takes a configuration file for the target, because this board is based on this GPU. So first it will load this CPU file. Okay, and then after that it tells that this board supports a JTag debugger. So we are setting a JTag debugger. Okay, then after that we are setting it to, we are telling that you don't reset the board. Okay, and we are telling on which pin we need to perform the configuration, which we need to take control on. Okay, so once I run this, because of the CPU, and since there is a necessary configuration, so what happens is we'll be able to take the control of our particular board. Okay, so this is one of the important things that will happen. Yeah. So now what we will do is, so this is the configuration what we need to select for a Raspberry Pi. Okay, so else otherwise there are a lot of many boards that is available. You can use any of this board configuration file to debug. I'm sure you might be working on any of this board. So you can check out which board is your system based on, and you can debug. Sometimes it will be an Atmel chip, you can select your Atmel board, or else there is different variant of Raspberry Pi, you can debug even that too. Okay, or else if you are debugging your RISC-V processor, there's a configuration file even for that, you can debug that also. Okay, or else if you want to debug your some other boards, basically wait, let us see this. Let us go for a beagle bone. There is a configuration even for the beagle bone. Yeah, so even that also you can debug. Let us see this here. So that is also possible. Okay, so or else if you want to debug your IMX chipset, even that you can debug, which is available here, like IMX 2731, all those things also we can debug. Okay, so or else if you want to debug your beagle bone is based on AM33X EVM. Okay, so that also you can use for debugging. Okay, or else there is a configuration file even for the TI beagle bone, so you can debug even that too here. Okay, so there is a configuration file even for that. Okay, so basically there is a configuration file for each and everything, and I think, I don't know whether you people know or not, there's a board called Panda board, which is based which is popular, similar to beaglebone. Yeah, which is from TI. Even for that you can use, there's a configuration file, you can debug even that also. Yeah, and there are a lot of NXP chipsets. Okay, so even that also we can debug. Yeah, so what I want to stress here is there is a configuration file for most of the everything on OpenOCD. That's the reason OpenOCD is also popular nowadays. Okay, and a lot of people keep adding, and whenever there's a new board comes up, there's an open source community developers who add a support for it, and see that OpenOCD supports that. Okay, so it supports almost any ARM cores. So everything is supported and it works fine. So that details will be available in this folder called board. Okay, so now this is about the board thing. And if you want, you can also get if I go to the chipset also, and you can select the chipset files. Okay, for example, if you want to debug some Atmel chipset, Okay, so there is a configuration file for boards also. So there is a configuration file even for that also. Okay, so you can select even that. Okay, so based on the need, you can select the particular chipset and you can perform the configurations. Yeah, so there's a configurations even for that. Okay, or else there are a lot of tools which you can use for your operation. Like for example, if you want to do your memory test, or else if you want to do a firmware recovery, there is also a TCL file which you can use to perform the operation. So all those things are possible. Yeah, in case if you are having an FPGA and you want to debug your FPGA and it supports a JTAG pinout, even that also you can debug. Yeah, so for example, in this case, the popular one is nothing but your Xilinx and Altera. So you can debug even that also using this OpenOCD. That is also possible using this. Okay. So here, so all the things, all the basic popular available hardwares, you will be able to debug via OpenOCD, and there's a configuration file for that also. So you need not write everything from the scratch. Almost everything has been available, which you can use for our debugging purposes. Okay. So this is the main thing what we can pass and which we can use for our JTAG debugging. Okay, so this is the folder. So that is what if you when you don't give a -s as configuration file, right? So it will always refer to this folder to point to all the configuration script. Okay, so by default this is the path. Yeah. Okay, so now we know how to do, we know some detail about OpenOCD. Now the next question is we need to set up our Raspberry Pi for debugging. If you take a standard Raspberry Pi board, it doesn't have a JTAG pinout. Somehow we need to get a JTAG pinout out of it for debugging. Okay, so in this steps, we will see how to do a JTAG, how to get a JTAG pinout. Okay, so before that, what we have to do is we need to get a detail of our CPU so that we know what is the pinout details of our JTAG. Okay, so that can be done by using the proc CPU info. The moment you run that, we'll be able to take the control of our board and fetch the detail of our board. Okay, so let me access my board. Just give me a second. I will just showcase that to you people. Yeah, I will share it. Yeah, can you see this now?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is my Raspberry Pi board. Okay, so if you see the cat proc CPU info, okay, so you'll be able to see the detail about the chipset. So in my case, I'm using a Raspberry Pi board, so which is nothing but Raspberry Pi 3. Okay, so this has three cores of four cores available, and there's a detail about it, telling that which part, which revision it belongs to, and what chipset, and all those detail is available in this particular thing. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to extract these details. Okay, so we need to extract this revision details. Yeah, and after that what you can do is moment you extract the revision details, either you can go to this revision table. There is a revision table where you can get to know what Raspberry Pi version it belongs to and how to get a deal, because whenever you want to do an access to the JTAG, right, the 4 pins are very important. You need to get TDI, TDO, TMS and TCK. Okay, so other than that you can get other signals also, but these are the main lines. Okay, so we need to see how to get the pin out. So based on the board details, for example, in our case, the Raspberry Pi 3, it's nothing but based on BCM 2835. Okay. So now our question is to find out where the pin node for that particular board is available. So if you remember JTAG, your Raspberry Pi has a 40 pin out, 40 pin GPIO output. Okay, so in that 40 pin GPIO, there are few pins which is available for our JTAG. Okay, so in that case, if you see this, right, so what we see is, so there are normally in the board, Raspberry Pi 3 board, what I have, it has two modes. Okay, so if you remember, right, I think you'll be knowing the GPIO will support multiple configurations. Okay, so it will not be a single purpose. It will not be used for GPIO alone, but it will be used for multiple things. You people know about that, right? Basically. So since it will be used for
Yes.
multiple purposes, so there are a lot of modes for that pin lines. Okay, for example, if you take GPIO 0, It supports alt. There is a mode called alt 0, alt 1, and alt 2. These are the only two modes it supports. And it tells if I select alt 0 mode for this GPIO line, right, it will work as a SDA 0 line. Okay. So like this, now if you see, right, the pin out what I need, right, it is available in alt 4 mode also, and it is available in alt 5 mode also. Okay. So now we need to decide which mode I need. So in my case, I've selected Alt 4 mode. This is the popular mode. Okay. So we select an Alt 4 mode. So this is what I have selected in my particular board also. Okay. So which means that I will not be able to access this GPIO 23, 22, 23, 24, and all these lines is not accessible anymore, because this will be reserved for my jTag debugging lines as a jTag debugging lines. So using these lines, I'll be able to access my TDI, TMS, TCK, TDO, RTCK, and TRST. Okay, so this lines is sufficient. Okay, so once we get it, okay, now so we know which line is available. Now we need to develop an adapter so which can fetch this line out. Okay, so that for that what we have to do is, since we know this pin number, we need to map, we need to check out where is the GPIO 22 on the your 40 pin output, okay, on your Raspberry Pi. So similarly for 23, 24, 25, 26, we need to figure out that we need to get the pin out, okay, which I've done in my case. Okay, and then what you have to do is, just give me a second. So you need to check out, just, yeah, yeah, now we need to check out this pin out. Okay, so we need to map to this pin out and make the corresponding configurations. Yeah. So now we have a TDA line, we have a TMS line, TCK, TRTCK, TDO, TRST. So all these lines we have. Okay, so we need to make this connection, and V reference is nothing but in our, we need to connect it to 3.3 volts. Okay, so we need to connect to 3.3 volts. So this one we need to connect to 3.3 volts, and all these lines should be connected to ground. So we need to make this connection, and we need to connect a resistor of you can normally, if you want, you can just leave it blank. Okay, you need to connect some let us assume some, in my case I've connected some 500 ohm resistors. Okay, so you can connect whatever you want in your case. Okay, so it's always
But
recommended to
actually
connect.
that is shorted, right?
It is yeah, it's shorted via the resistor.
Yes. Okay. 0 ohm resistor, right? That is.
Yeah, 0 ohm, but normally we don't connect at 0 ohm. So now what normally we do is we connect with a lesser value resistor, not an higher value, a lesser value, which is in the range of ohm. Even if it's short, also even the wire will also have some resistance with it, will be okay. But to be on a safer side, you can connect some lower value of resistors. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the main thing. So if you look at the previous example, right, I showcased to you how to get the pin out from your board. Okay, so once you get a pin out, so your job is to connect that to these lines basically, and you need to make an adapter. Okay, so one adapter should be going to this Olimex board. So other end should be going to your 40 pin. It should be connecting to your 40 pin of your Raspberry Pi GPIO. Okay, so I will just show the picture. How does it look once you make the connection? So it should look something like this, which is the current case. So you can do it via, even via the you get this jumper wires, using that also you can do it initially to get control. Okay, so I tried with a jumper wire, and later we did it something like this. Okay, so if you see here, this is how it look like. Okay, so this end will go to your Olimex board. Okay, so this end will go to your 40 pin GPIO, Raspberry Pi GPIO. Okay, so and if you see here, this wiring is nothing but the ultimately which will connect it to TDIO of Olimex board. Okay, so same thing, you should make one-to-one connection and everything, and after that you make a connection. You can also use an LED to check out that the ground is proper and all the LED is glowing at the right brightness, which indicates that yeah, it has a sufficient power to work fine. Okay, so this is one of the main thing which you have to do a connection. So once you do this connection, so it means that you will be able to use your Olimex debugger to take the control of your Raspberry Pi board and start debugging. Okay, so now we will see So at this point, you'll have the so once you do this, so you'll be able to get the connection. So this is the first part. Okay. So now the next part is you should have a kernel to which you should be able to debug. Okay. So for that, I have done the setup at my end. Okay, but I will show it to you what need to be done for your case. For that, there's Raspberry Pi has a very good documentation. Because reason is, if you want to debug the jet your kernel, right, you should have a debug kernel at your end to debug. Yeah. So there is a very good documentation from Raspberry Pi which you can refer. Okay. So this documentation tells completely where to download the Raspberry Pi kernel from. Okay, and how to build it. Okay, so if you check out here, they tell that a Raspberry Pi kernel, this is the GitHub link where you need to download your Raspberry Pi kernel. So it is not normally what happens is your Raspberry Pi, your mainline kernel it doesn't support Raspberry Pi effectively. So you have to download it from the GitHub link only. Okay, so to make it to see that it effectively works. Yeah, so this is the GitHub link where you have to download your Raspberry Pi kernel and you have to start debugging. So using this you'll be able to debug. Okay, so before doing that, there are some dependency list which you need to take care of as mentioned in this. So you have to install all these packages. These are the necessary packages that is required for your Raspberry your kernel to be built effectively. Okay, so you have to download it. Yeah, so once that is done, so based on your board, so it is so normally the single kernel will be used for all your different boards. Yeah, so in this case you have to select which board based on the board what you are debugging. You need to select the necessary configurations. Okay, so in my case I have a Raspberry Pi 3, so I should be selecting this kernel, this configuration. Yeah, so once I have done a GitHub link, so I have cloned a GitHub link as mentioned in this in this link. Okay, so what we have to do is the next step is we have to go inside the kernel and run this command. So so at this point, so you will have your kernel configured and it will be built. Okay, so this is the first step. Yeah, so yeah, I've done the same thing in my case in the folder called Raspberry Pi 3. Okay, so this is the Linux kernel what I have installed. Okay, and I also compiled also. Yeah, so so you can also do the same thing, and you should be able to compile it. Okay, so this is the first step. So this is the first step. Yeah. So once that is done, this is when you are building on the this is when you are building on Raspberry Pi. So this is the case when you are building on the Raspberry Pi, because then you need not do all the things. But normally, most of the times, your development happens on a host system, which is not Raspberry Pi. So in that case, what you have to do is for cross compilation, there is some more libraries which you need to take care of and see you install. And after that, you also need to download a cross compile toolchain. So for that, there is a command how to download the cross compiler toolchain. So based on whether it's 64-bit or 32-bit, you have to download. Okay, so I've already downloaded. So using the same command, and after that, you'll be able to see this cross compile toolchain. Okay, so this is the toolchain that will be used for building our kernel. This is the first step. Okay, so let me zoom it. Give me a second. Yeah, I think this should be fine. Yeah. So this is the kernel. What we will be, what I am using in my case, because I'm building a 32-bit kernel. And the reason is Raspberry Pi 3 doesn't have a 64-bit processor, so we are not building a 64-bit kernel. So what we will be building is a 32-bit kernel. So that I need a 32-bit tool chain, which was achieved using this command. Okay. So once you achieve it, you have to go to this folder, and based on the config board, you have to select the necessary configuration. So once you do this, you will get a make menu config. So you can select the configuration whatever you want. Okay. So in my case, let me run this command. So let me come out. Okay. So already it is there. So what I will do is, yeah. So you'll be able to see this configuration. The kernel, this kernel is based on 5.10.63. Okay, so this is the latest kernel available in the GitHub link, which I've used for my debugging. Okay, so then after that, I've enabled few features. So you can also enable based on your need. So I've enabled some debugging macros. Okay, so then after I've enabled traces, some more debugging things. Yeah, so all the parts I've enabled here. So you can also do it based on your requirements. Yeah, so then after that, if you see the details here of this particular board system type, so you will see that this is of which is based for ARM-v7. That is nothing but which is required for our Raspberry Pi 3 board. So that is also available here in this case. Okay. So once you have done the configuration, right, you can start building it. Okay. So for that, you have to pass a command. So this is the one. So once you do this command, your kernel will be built. So you're basically building the kernel image. You're basically building the kernel modules, and then you're building the DTS. That is nothing but device tree blobs, because your kernel needs a device tree blobs, which we are building also. Okay. So once you are built and your image is up and is ready. Okay. So at that point, what you should do is you need to copy all the files to your chipset, your board. That is nothing but your SD card, so that you to make it work with this new bootloader, and you can start debugging also. Yeah. So for this, there are some particular files what you have to copy. So one thing is you need to copy the Z image, that is nothing but a kernel image. You need to copy all the DTSs. Okay. Then you have to copy even in the overlay files. Yeah. And then you have to copy your fat. So you need to copy all this, basically this part, DTS files. Yeah. And then your kernel image. So these are the necessary things that need to be copied. Yeah. So if I show you that, just give me a second, I will just showcase that to you. Yeah. So if you see here, it's available on this board called, let us look at it, mount. Okay. So if you see here, everything is available in the folder called /boot. If I go to this folder called /boot, you will find a lot of configuration files here. Okay, you'll find a lot of configuration file. I've already built and made a backup of the old image. This is my new image with which my kernel is building. This is nothing but your Z image. Okay, so your Z image is available here. Yeah, and then you will have all the configure DTB files also has been copied, which you see here. Okay, so all the DTB files are copied and it's available here, and even the overlays also put up in this. So you'll find all the overlay files also, which is present here. Yeah. So all the things are copied here. So once you copy it, then you have to, what you have to do is, we have to enable a particular configuration to make for my JTag. If you remember the JTag pin nodes, right?
So I have a
Yeah,
small doubt.
yeah,
What
yeah,
is
yeah.
the overlay? Why it is used for this folder overlay?
See, normally what happens is you have your device tree blob. Okay, so
Yes.
device tree blobs needs and one more blob for working. Okay, so that overlay, that is called as a overlay, and which will be put in that overlay folder.
Okay. Inside that one is DTB, that a device tree block globally.
Yeah, device tree blob only, which is like an include files. You can think as an you have a main application and you have a shared object, right, which will be loaded only when it is needed, right? Something like
Yeah.
that. Okay,
Oh.
and that loading and unloading can be done by the config files. Yeah. So if you see, normally what happens is all the feature will not be enabled. They'll be loaded only when it is needed. Yeah. So if you come to this config file, right, you can enable all of these features one after the other. So based on that, it will load the corresponding module from the overlay folder. Yeah.
Okay.
So in my case, so what I've done is I've enabled UART, because UART was not enabled by default. I'm enabling the UART by this option called enable underscore UART. Okay. And I've also enabled JTag GPIO, because the reason is by default, the GPIO will be configured as GPIO only. But in my case, I want the JTag pins to be available. So for this, we have to enable this option called enable JTag underscore GPIO equal to 1. So once you do this, and if you restart your board, so your necessary overlay will be added. Yeah. And it will be up and running. Okay. So now your JTag will not be, your JTag pins will be active, and your GPIO on that particular line will be disabled. So this is the functionality what you can see. Other than that, there are a lot of options which you can use and configure. For example, you can set your arm, you can set the frequency at what frequency you want your board to run. So whether you want to make SPI turn off or on, so all those things you can select. Okay, so all those things, and you can also select your own overlays as set here. If you check out here, we are setting a different overlays. In this case, what we are doing is we are setting a different DRM overlay folders. So if you want, you can also select a different DRM file. So all those things are possible in this particular case. Okay. So once we make all this configuration, and you can also set your frame buffer console folder. So what should be a frame buffer width and height? So we can set all of these parameters. So once we set these parameters and once you reboot your board, at least the main parts which is required for our debugging is nothing but this part. This is the main line, main important part. So once you do this, and if you restart your board, and if you copied all the configurations as per this, if you have done all these necessary configurations, now your board should be booting this kernel and it should be working. Yeah. So in my case, if you see here, okay. So in my case, if I check out uname -a, it is nothing but it is running my 5.10.63 kernel. This is not a default kernel. Even if you take your latest Raspbian image, it will not be running this one. Okay, so this is the latest one which I have built and I've loaded here. Yeah, so this exactly matches to the kernel version what I was showing last time. I showed you that 5.10.63, right? That is also up and running. Yeah, so if you want to make sure that it's working fine, you can also change some parameters in the module extra string or something, kernel extra string, so that you get to know that yeah, this is your kernel. Okay, so once your board is booting with your kernel, then your half of your job is done. So next part is you have to take the control of your board and you should be debugging it. Okay, so now we will do, so this is the main important part. So once this is done, after once you have booted your board with all the steps, so now your board is ready for debugging. Yeah, so we will do some after this. Yeah, let's just give me a second. We'll just go back to the slides. Okay, so now with this, your board should be, once you make this hardware connection, and if you connect your OpenOCD debuggers, in my case, it's Olimix. You can also order the same thing, or you can select anything is based on you. So you should be able to take the control of your board, and you should be able to debugging. Okay, so in our case, okay, so in my case, so since I have a Raspberry Pi board, I should be selecting this particular configuration for debugging. Okay, so where I tell that my interface is nothing but Olimex board, whatever I showed you. Okay, then I'm telling that my board belongs to Raspberry Pi 3 config. So moment I run these two lines, my OpenOCD should be able to take the control of the board and it should be up and running. Yeah, to showcase that, because this is for debugging my another Atmel board, which I have another Atmel board at home. So this is for debugging my other Atmel board. Okay, so since the interface is same, the interface will remain same. So in this case, I'm selecting a different target. Okay, so different target I'm selecting, and after that, if you want to connect to this OpenOCD, you can also do this telnet connection and connect it. And if you want to do a GDB debugging, you can open a GDB debugger and connect it via this target remote command. Okay, so these are the main things what you need to do. Yeah, so what I would do is we will just so in my case, I have to connect the board. Okay, so what you have to do is, can you see this configuration now?
No, actually not. We are getting the Raspberry Pi terminal only.
Oh, Raspberry Pi terminal. Huh?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay, fine. Yeah, can you see this now?
Yeah, just before you have shown something, right? In marking.
That is, sorry, I was showing this one. I think you were not able to see it.
Yes, yes, yes.
This I wanted to show. Okay,
Okay, okay.
so so basically, what I was trying to tell is, the interface. Since I have an Olimex board at my end, right? We need to select which interface I'm using with OpenOCD, and we need to tell which board we are trying to debug. Okay, then I have another Atmel board at my home. So the first part remains the same. So second part only changes. Okay, so once you make this connection, right, you can do a telnet to this particular board, and you can also take the control of your OpenOCD via telnet. Okay, or else OpenOCD also exposes in GDB stub. So where you can use the GDB to connect to this and you can start debugging. Yeah. So we'll see with an example. So this is the main things. Yeah. So did you people understand till here?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So now what I would do is, okay. So now if you see here, in this case, okay. So we need to select which open OCD. Wait, let me remove this. I don't need this. I will just close this also. Yeah. Okay. So in this case, what we have to do is we have this. So we need to select the open OCD because this is an USB connection. So I have to attach it to my my particular Linux subsystem to take the control of it. Okay. So if you see my dmessage queue, it is let me clear my dmessage queue. Sudo dmessage minus c. Okay. So now dmessage. Wait. Sudo dmessage minus c. Dmessage. Okay, it's blank. Okay. So now I will connect this particular debugger. Okay. So it should be connected. Yeah. If you see here, it has got connected. Okay. So ultimately my Olimix board is exposing the serial interfaces, which is used for serial debugging. Okay. And which is available on the serial line. So this is one thing. And also it exposes the USB lines here. Okay. And this is based on FDTI. If you can see this here. Okay. So to check out, we can also do ls USB. And if you see here, my Olimix hardware is having 1B for 15BA and 002B. This is the different VID and PID numbers, what you see here. Okay. So vendor ID and the product ID. So this is 15BA is the product ID. Okay. And this is the vendor ID, what you're seeing here. Okay. So once you look at configuration files, right, we can go to that folder, CD user. Okay. Share OpenOCD scripts. So the interface. So it is nothing but FDTI. So this one, Open Olimix. Okay. So ARM USB OCD h.cfg. Okay. So for this thing to work, it should have this PID and it should have this. So it should have this VID and PID. So we can see if this has this. Okay. If you check out it as it matches 15BA, which matches. Okay. And 002B, which matches. So so now my it's matching. So this also give an indication that this is the right configuration file. So once I run this particular OpenOCD with this particular FreeDA driver, should be able to take the control of the hardware at that point of time. Okay. So let us run the command to do that. So I'll go to the home folder. So and let me run this command. Okay. So now I'm running this command. So this is the command. If you see here, okay. So once I run it, so it is confirming if this is correct or not. Okay. So the first thing what you see is it's listening, it is taking some TCL connection and all those things. You can just so if you see here, it is looking at 6661 for some TCL connection basically. Okay. And at 441 it has opened one telnet connection, and then it scanned, and the clock speed for this is running at 400 kilohertz. That is nothing but 400 megahertz. Okay. And there is a JTAG tab, and it found out that there is a CPU BCM2837 available. So it has found that, and it also confirmed based on the tab ID, and it also found that this manufacturer belongs to ARM, and it also has the version part number and the version number. So all this thing it has found. Okay. So then after that, it also found that it has 4 CPU cores here. So if you can see here, it has found there is a 4 CPU cores, and it is also indicating telling that I can set a 6 breakpoints, that is nothing but hardware breakpoints, and 4 watch points per CPU core. So all this information also we can we are able to get from here. Okay. So then after that, at this point, the GDP port is disabled. So now what you can see is a GDP server has started on different ports. In case I want to debug the core 0, I need to connect to this port. If I want to debug the core 1, I should connect to this port. If I want to debug core 2, I should connect to this port. Okay. If I want to debug the core 3, I want to connect to this port. Okay. So there are different ports which is available for my debugging. Yeah. So what we will do now is, did people get till this point?
Yeah, each core the hardware breakpoint is maximum 6 only we can give.
Yeah, true. There is a limitation. This is the ARM limitation. You can't set anything more than this.
Okay, but software we can give
Yeah, you can
n
give n
number.
number of software breakpoints, but moment you give an hardware breakpoint, you can set only maximum 6 breakpoints.
Okay.
Okay. So now once it is done, okay. So what we have to do is now this is available. Okay. So now we will take a telnet connection and we will see what all things we can do using the telnet connection. Yeah. So I will just open duplicate one window. Okay, then I'll open a telnet connection to that particular port number. So now it has taken a control of OpenOCD debugger, and I can get all the information about I can get all the information. This all things is what we can do. So we can get the version details. Okay, the basic OpenOCD version. I can do a trace history. Okay, I can fetch out. I can do a transport initialization. Okay, so or else I can also get the target information. Okay, I can get the target information. Yeah, or else what I can do is I can also read the board. I can read the register information, or I can modify the register values. Yeah, I can reset the board if I want. Yeah, that is also possible. I can also list all tasks that is running. Yeah, so that is also possible. Okay, so and if I have an AND flash, I can also use an AND flash and I can start writing the data. I can initialize the NAND flash and I can do some write, read or write the value. So that is also possible. I can read a physical memory directly. Okay, so or else I can do a memory dump. That is also possible. I can load an image. So basically, if I want to debug by loading a new image, that is also possible. So for example, assume that I want to do a bare metal programming on Raspberry Pi. And I want to, so in that case, the kernel should not be available. So after that, what I can do is I can take a complete control of my Raspberry Pi board and I can put a bare metal code and I can work on that also. So that is also possible. Okay. So all those things are possible. So all those things it supports basically. Okay. So now and after that, you can also do all of this. You can alt if you want. Yeah. So you can change the GDB port number. So all those things are possible. You can also do a GDB breakpoint you can set. You can tell what it should do, whether you should do a soft breakpoint by default or should it use an hard breakpoint. All those things are possible. Okay. So let us assume I want to set a GDB breakpoint to be soft. So what I will do is I will tell, okay, and then after that I will tell soft. Okay, so I'm setting all the breakpoints to soft. So even though the somebody is setting an hardware breakpoint, any breakpoint via GDB, it will become a soft breakpoint. So that is also been overwritten. Yeah. So like this, there are a lot of configuration using which you can control your OpenOCD part of it. Yeah. So all those things are possible. Then after that, if you want to do a DAP, if you want to run a DAP commands, you can also do a DAP command. That is also possible. Yeah. So you can also get a DAP info if you want. That is also possible. Okay. So let us see DAP info. So you will get to know what DAP, basically what is available on my board, that I can get a complete detail. Okay.
So
So
can you
it,
explain what's DAP? I didn't get actually.
so it's a debug interface actually, debug adapter interface, which will be available on the ARM board. Okay. So it's a debug unit. And there will be a set of commands to do it. So once I scan this, right, it is scanning my board and it is giving the complete detail, telling that what is the ID. So when it was designed, okay, so what kind of board it belongs to. So all those things it lists down here. If you can check out, it is listing all the DAP informations here. Okay, it's nothing but a debug entity. Okay, so all this information, and if you check out here, my board belongs to Cortex AF 53. So that is also been listed here. Okay, so all these debug units are available. So that is what it indicates. Okay, so then after that, if you want, you can also get an information about your all your boards basically. So for example, if you want to get an information about your different BCM cores, that also you can do it. So for example, you can get a there is an info command where I will just show you. So you can also control your CPU cores also. You can check out and let me get the current state. There is a command called getting the current state. Just give me a second. Okay. So I want to find out what is the current state. So I can get it. Okay. So current state, cur state. So I can get to it's telling that CPU core 3 is running. Okay. So it is also telling 2 is running. So all the cores are running. Okay. 1 is running. Okay. So all the cores are running and everything is fine. So nothing is stopped. So all the cores are running. So that is what is the indication we get from here. Okay. So all this information also we can fetch from this particular command line of JET OpenOCD. Okay. So which will access the board, and all these things are possible because we are able to access the core and get all the details. Yeah. So all those things are possible, so you can get that. Okay. And so if you want, you can if you want to change an adapter parameters, you can change even that also. So all these things are possible via this particular OpenOCD command line. Yeah. So this is about the OpenOCD command line. Okay. So now let us assume that I want to debug the kernel. Okay. So for this, as I told you, there is an different interface that is available. Where is it? Yeah. So there are different interface available. Like for example, all three threes, 4 3 3s is a place where CPU core 0 is available. So if I want to debug CPU core 0, I can do from there also. Okay. So like that, there are different cores which is available for debugging. Okay. So what I would do is first let me load the image. So what I will do is I'm already in this folder. So let me run. Okay. I will run a GDB and I load this kernel file. Okay. So after doing this, it is loaded my kernel file. Yeah. So now it is loaded a kernel file. My job is to connect to that particular debug stub interface, which is running at this place. Okay. Which is running as a part of OpenOCD. So what I would do is now. So I will run the command. Just give me a second. Okay. So we have to run this command called target extend remote 333. Okay. So once I run this command, I should be able to take a control of this particular board at this particular port number. Okay. So let us do this. And this takes a control of core 0. Yeah. So if you see here, it has taken the control of the board. Now I can get all the parameters, like I can get info registers. Okay. So I got I'm getting the info about the registers. Okay. So now I get to know where it is. I can get a backtrace and find out where it was running. So this is the call stack of the code which is running on the board at that point. Okay. Now my CPU won't run. So this is what you can see here. Yeah. And if I go to this telnet and see the core status now, for example, CPU core status is altered, but 1 is running. Okay. 2 is running. Yeah. And 3 is running. So all other cores are running. Okay, but only one core is not running. Okay, so it's altered now, and it's able to. So only one. I'm able to debug one of the cores, and get all the information from that particular core. So that is what I'm seeing here. So I'm getting all the information of that particular core. Okay, and you can see here everything is working fine. Yeah. So if you can do it, and if you see the list, this is the code. What is happening? So what I can do is after this. I can list all the things. I can get information about the registers. Okay, so this gives me an info about the registers. Okay, so then so once you get a information about the registers, If you want, you can also view the code also. Just give me a second. There is a command where you can list the code. Just give me 1 second. I'll show it you that. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so using that, I should be able to see the. Just give me a second. No, not this one. Yeah. So this is the main thing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now what I would do is leave it next. Okay. So I'm able to get the source code also. Okay. So at this point, I have a source code. Yeah. So if you see here, you also have the real source code at the end and the assembly language code at the down. So what I can do is I can debug. So I can debug and I can see what exactly is going on in each and every place. Okay. So now I can see what is the information about the flags. So it gives an information about the flag. Okay. So now I can just go next and I can keep seeing what is it happening at at a particular time. Okay. So you can debug as you see here. Okay. So if I want to see the content of RDP now, RDP, so I get it. And if I want to see the content of, just give me a second. No. So print RDP din ticks. That's called nesting. Okay. So sorry, I think I gave something wrong here. Print RDP din ticks nesting. Okay, so it's 0, or else let us print the complete structure RDP. Okay, so you get all the parameters from that particular thing. So all these things, whatever we are reading is from the particular board. Okay, so we can run again and we can debug wherever you want. If you want, you can also set a breakpoint. Okay, and you should be able to run. So that is also possible. So we can stop if you want. At any point of time, you can stop, you can run. Okay, or else you can interrupt and you can give continue if you want to make it running. Okay, so all those things are possible. Yeah, this is for the core one debugging. Now if you want, we can also debug the other cores also. Okay, so this is how we will be debugging and we can see anything. So we can keep debugging, we can keep seeing the source code. Okay, so let us assume I want to put a breakpoint at watch break schedule. Let us see if it's the schedule breakpoint. So now it should be info break. And if you see here, this is set at this address. So this is the memory mapped physical address at this location where the source code is available. Okay. So moment if you see, oh, it's not able to set. Let me delete it. It's fine, not an issue. So we can also set watch gfs. So continue. See here, each time this particular gfs changes, right? It is hitting it. Okay. So I can check out where it came up from. Yeah. So if you see here, you're getting a complete detail where it came from and all those things. Yeah. So there are a complete big thing. Let me do. So backtrace BAT. If you see here, you can also get the information about this timekeeping, how it is coming. Okay, so where the GFIS is getting modified, so why it is getting modified. Okay, so all those information, it came up from the hardware interrupt handler. Okay, so that is one thing what you get. Okay, so then you also get all this information. So all this information also you can fetch, and you can put a breakpoint at any particular point. So from this point I can debug and I can go on basically. So instead of doing this time before, and this is what it, and I can print GFIS, and I can see what is the GFIS at this particular point. Yeah. So we can keep continuing. Okay. And we can see what is happening. So we can debug this also. All this debugging is possible here. Okay. So all this particular thing is possible in this particular case. Yeah. So, and after that, let me continue again. So moment the GFIS changes, again it will stop. Okay, so like this you will be able to debug, and since I deleted all the breakpoints, even the watch breakpoint has gone, so you're not seeing that. Okay, so but what you will be able to do is, using this I'm able to connect to my Raspberry Pi board and I'm able to debug. Okay, so this is the first step, what using which you should be able to connect and you should be able to debug. Yeah, so any questions still here?
So while connecting this one, it will be halting the entire process of the Raspberry Pi, right?
You can do that. First, it will do it, but after that, since I want to debug only one core, right? So it will now only take control of one core and it will leave all the other cores running.
Okay, the other codes will be working, so there is
Other
no
cores will be
issue.
working.
Okay, okay.
But this might normally there'll be no issues because it will work fine. But
Hmm.
sometimes you might end up in problem because some kernels are running and it may need a data from this core.
Hmm.
So it might sometimes it might end up into problems, but normally it should not be an issue. You should be able to debug and continue working.
Okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
So or else if you want to debug everything simultaneously, better you can open four GDBs unit, connect to all of them parallelly. And the moment you do that, you should be able to get the complete control, and we should be able to start working on that. Yeah. Okay. So if you see here, we are able to debug by connecting by Raspberry Pi, and we can do all the debugging stuffs whatever we want here. Okay. So this way we can do it. Yeah. So the only the critical point here is we should be able to do a proper configuration for the kernel. Okay. So once you do a proper config, the reason is the kernel what you are debugging, a kernel which is there on the board should be same. Otherwise, the debugging symbols won't match, and it won't work properly. Okay. So that is the one thing what you need to take care. And after that, you should have to set up a right hardware connections. So in my case, I've used the open source debugger, which is a cheap one. Cheap in the sense it will also cost some 10 to 15K, but it's not as costly as your Lauterbach or other thing, which will cost lakhs together. Okay. So, but one advantage is you can debug at your home and you will understand all the concepts very well. It has some limitation. It is slow, but it's effective and good enough. And this doesn't have any UI as your Lauterbach or other things. If you take all your third-party vendors, Lauterbach debuggers, right, they will have a very good and effective front end UI. Okay, so there is no UI as such here, but we will be able to do our task, which is one of the important thing. It is slow, but it is okay for our in-house development, for our small things. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you are mentioning that the Raspberry Pi also we can convert to this.
Yeah, you can convert Raspberry Pi also to our debugger. It's called bitbanging. You can convert Raspberry Pi also as OpenOCD debugger. So the configuration will be something like this. Okay. So that will consume some time. Okay. If you have a patience and if you can do it, then you can do it. Okay. So where you will have one Raspberry Pi board. Okay. And it will have a 40 pin GPIO lines.
Hmm.
Yeah. And what you can do is you can use the target Raspberry Pi board, or you can debug any board, not Raspberry Pi only. Any
Hmm.
ARM board you take. Okay, so you should connect it and get a 20 pin ARM output. From this 20 pin, you should convert it to 20 pin ARM output, and you can connect to any JTAG lines on the board, and you should be able to debug. This is possible.
Okay, in that the connector, the connect, not target that host Raspberry Pi is right. Which one we are
No,
going to
Raspberry
convert?
Pi will act as a debugger. Okay, so
Okay.
once it acts as a debugger, right, what it will do is it will start a GDB server on your Ethernet port. So on an host computer, you can connect to this GDB interface and you can start debugging.
Okay. In that one, which pins we need to connect? In general GPIO pins we can convert to,
Yeah, you
or
can say if you remember, I showed you one picture, right, where there were few lines.
yeah, TDM, TDS that.
Yeah, those lines you'll be using normally for performing the operations.
Okay, that is for target, right?
Target also you can use even for that. Wait, I will show you the configuration file. You'll get a picture. Okay. So wait, where is it? Yeah. Okay. So if you remember, give me a second. I think I showcased you one thing. User local. I think that if you are trying to do that, that's a good thing. It will not cost much because Raspberry Pi will cost only 3K to 4K. It will take bit of effort, but you can convert your own Raspberry Pi as a debugger. That is also possible. Okay, so if you go to it, and this is the interface. If you go to this interface, right, there is interface for your Raspberry Pi. So if you want Raspberry Pi 2 or something, you can select it. Yeah, this is the one. So it will use the pin number 11, 25, 10, and 9 for this. This is your GPIO line. GPIO 11, GPIO 25, GPIO 10, and GPIO 9. The pin on the header is nothing but 23 pin, 22 pin, 19 pin, and 21 pin. It will be using this.
Okay, that is
Don't,
multiplexed for TCA and TCM.
pardon? Yeah.
No.
That is nothing but TCK, TMS, TDIO, and TDO. It will take into the control.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Good.
So these are the lines. If you do it, actually, there are some articles online how to convert it. You just need to do it. It's very simple. The people have mentioned a lot of things. Okay, so there is already an hardware called Raspberry Pi at. I don't know whether you know it. It's at least it is not available here in India. So you can use that for setting up your own Raspberry Pi. Okay, so this is the one, like they're telling how to debug it. Okay, so in this examples, you can just refer to this. There are a lot of article online. If you use it, then you can convert your Raspberry Pi as GPIO. There is a bitbank driver. This is something like this. Okay, so if you can use this, all of this, then your system should work as your debugger later. So there are a lot of articles online. If you can follow it, it's very simple. See, they given the header how they will do it. Okay, so then after that, using this, you should be able to take out and perform the operations. So in case I showed you the hardware, right? If you feel that is difficult to do it, right, you can use the header, something like to connect from my Olimex boards. You can use something like this also, jumper lines. You can use this kind of a jumper lines also, basically, yeah, to do the connection. This is also okay. Initially, I did via this, but later this was becoming loose over the time. So that's the reason I moved to the header kind of a mechanism. Okay, so you can select what you want and you can use it for debugging. Okay.
Yeah, got it.
So this is the way. So once you do it right, if you check out here, your Raspberry Pi will be up and running. Then what you can do is after that you can start connecting your GDB plugins and you can start debugging. So that is also possible. So there is an information, lot of information online. You can use it. It's a much simpler way. That's a easy, cost-effective solution also. So battery, the advantage of using Raspberry Pi is you can use it tomorrow for some other purpose also other than this. Okay, so that also I can try, but it's not a there is information available online. Basically, we have to set those things. Okay. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. Yes, good.
Yeah. So something like this basically. So once you do it, then you should be able to debug, connect, and debug and get all the information at any point of time. Okay. So so this is the main thing. So what I will do is, and actually we'll break for the day today. Okay. Then tomorrow what we will do is again we will meet up tomorrow at the same time. Yeah, and then we will do some more debugging exercises tomorrow with the board. Yeah, with some more things we will do. Yeah, so today
Okay.
I've just given the introduction, and tomorrow we'll go into the kernel debugging and do more with respect to that. Yeah.
Okay.
So but did you people understand till here how to do it and other things? Yeah. Hello, all of you. Is did you people get the point?
Yeah, for me, it's okay.
Yeah, okay, fine. Then it's okay. And but I don't know whether you'll be really using OpenOCD. This is just an introduction to your jTag debugging. Okay. But I'm sure most of your companies or if you are working somewhere on offline, you'll be using some different hardwares, not this one. Okay. But this is something which you can use for your hobby purpose also at your home, and you can do all the things what your high-end hardware does, but with at a less at a cost of lesser speed. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay then. So then we will break for today. I think this is sufficient because then if I cover too much, then it will be for too much for you people. So try to digest this for today. Then tomorrow we will meet up at the same time and we will do some more debugging stuff with respect to this. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, yes.
So then fine. So then we'll break for the day and we'll meet up tomorrow at the same time. Yeah. Okay. And if there is any doubt, please let me know. We can discuss tomorrow also. Okay. So whatever I given is just you can just have it, but I would recommend you people to do the same thing on your boards also. Purchase a new board and try it out because only debugging via this JTAG will help you understand more about it and make you more perfect with respect to that. Okay. So okay then. So we will break for the day and we will meet up tomorrow at the same time. Yeah. So is there any questions to discuss on, or shall we sign up for the day and meet up tomorrow at the same time?
So can you? I have a doubt on that. Our internals actually in that
Mhm.
memory mapping in that MPOL we are not reconnecting.
Oh, MPOL, you want to discuss more on MPOL, is
Yeah,
it?
MPOL and memory mapped IO.
Okay, fine. Tomorrow we will discuss on that also. Okay. First, I will discuss on that and then we will enter into the debugging session. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, then I will note down and I will discuss on that part tomorrow. Okay. Okay. MPOL and memory map devices, right?
Memory
Memory
map
mapped,
IO.
memory
IO.
mapped. Sure. We will discuss on that tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Sure. We will do that. Yeah. Okay, then we will break for the day and we will meet up tomorrow at the same time. Yeah. Okay. Okay, then
Thank you.
fine. Bye. Bye.